You actually think this place is haunted?
If it is, you're here for 5 days, so please get it on camera.
Hello? Who is that?
HELLHOUSE LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor. This is the fourth film in the HELLHOUSE LLC franchise, and also a prequel to the first film's location, I think, from what I read online anyway. Okay, full disclosure, I haven't seen any of the HELLHOUSE LLC films outside of a number of select clips and general overviews, but if the other three films are anything like this one, I'm gonna make sure I check them out at some point. I'm not sure if they're all set up in this way as this movie is, but I'm definitely interested. I know it takes place in 2 different locations, I think, and something about clowns that are expanded on a little bit in this movie. So if you don't like clowns, there are clown mannequins that do things, or maybe they don't. Apparently this film explains a little bit more into their backstory that the other films don't, but I really don't think it's all that much. Anyway, this particular film is set up as a fake documentary, examining the first-person footage of an aspiring filmmaker visiting the Carmichael Manor with her girlfriend and brother with the intent to discover if it is haunted and to solve the mystery of the grisly murders and disappearances of the Carmichaels themselves back in the 70s. The documentary wastes absolutely no time explaining that the filmmaker named Margot is dead already, and that this footage was mailed to her friends after her death. It uses Margot's footage and commentary from the friend and another investigator to add more context and make the film a documentary through that, which is interesting and honestly pretty smart, as it allows the found footage parts to have a soundtrack. Yes, this found footage movie has a soundtrack. That's not something you see every day. I know films like Paranormal Activity have a very low frequency rumble that I guess kind of counts as a soundtrack, but this one, no, this one has strings at some points. It's very interesting. The soundtrack is used sparingly, mostly just to accentuate creepy moments like those infamous clown mannequins I just spoke about appearing in places they shouldn't, or ghost sightings. There's plenty of ghost things going on here. The soundtrack is just used to accentuate those encounters. The one thing that confuses me though, especially for the later movies, is that this film takes an incredibly short amount of time to confirm that, hey, ghosts are real. This place is definitely haunted and probably kills people. Wow, who would have thought? This is a horror movie, right? Come on, we already knew that. But as a documentary, it's kind of like an exciting thing, and it wastes absolutely no time. It gets right into it. So with that confirmation, and this movie being a prequel, hey guys, editing Lark here, just going back through everything, and I realized I screwed up. This isn't actually a prequel. This is a sequel that has a prequel-esque story to it. That was not communicated to me. I thought this was a prequel. All the marketing I seen said it was a prequel, so excuse the few times that I talk about this being a prequel and how this affects things in the future. It doesn't really affect my score in any way, just letting you guys know. Thanks. Why would people bother making a haunt out of it for the first movie and everything else? It's probably explained in the other 3 movies, but that's just a nitpick I think of when I watch this, is I'm like, wait, if we know what happens here, and I'm not actually too sure when this film is supposed to take place in the canon of everything else, because I haven't seen those movies, and I don't recall there being a date on this one, except sometime modern after the 70s. Probably mid-2010s. I'm not sure. It's just a little odd. This movie also has a lot of the quote-unquote investigative tropes where the characters don't leave despite being in obvious danger, or touch or investigate things that the viewer and they probably know that they shouldn't. Like, hey, let's go touch this clown bass face in a room where he wasn't supposed to be. Oh, hey, look, that door's open and a bouncy ball ball came out of it. Let's go walk over and poke our head in and see what we find. That's weird. There's a random knock at the door, but nobody seems to be on the other side. Let's go open it and walk out. That kind of thing. I get it makes a little bit of sense for this movie because they're trying to investigate these occurrences and see these potential monsters and ghosts or whatever. But as a viewer, it's very, come on, you guys gotta practice a little bit of self-preservation here. I guess there is an argument for saying that the house or the hauntings themselves affect the people's behaviors, but to me that's a bit of a cop-out. I can understand it, but it's not really much of an explanation. I can't really complain though, because then there wouldn't be a movie. But it's just a small nitpick that I have with these kind of films. It was solved in other films like Grave Encounters, for example, by having the haunting mess with the geometry of the place, trapping people in as soon as they step inside. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. In fact, they do actually go outside, they explore the grounds, they go into details about the surrounding areas. Even when they get in there, the caretaker's like, oh hey, you might want to check out this antique store down the road. And they go to an antique store. There's nothing really trapping them in the house without going into spoilers. This film can actually be broken down into what I like to call a haunted house movie. Not just because it is about a haunted house, duh, but because it's set up in the way a haunted maze or a haunted house is if you go to like Halloween Horror Nights or Howl's Scream or any of the local haunt setup. It's pretty much made up as a set of series of isolated hauntings, one after the other, getting increasingly more elaborate or messed up while telling a story along the way, like walking through haunts do. And I think that was by design. The director, Stephen Cognetti, clearly has a vision, and I think it comes out really well here, especially with the cinematography, which I'll get into later. The actors also put on a very strong, believable performance, except for sticking around longer than one would, obviously, or separating themselves. The standouts being Margot herself, played by Bridget Rose Parada, who gives Margot an excited demeanor, and her brother Chase, played by James Little, who gives the character a quirky yet extremely caring personality with a backstory that I wish we go into a bit more. Maybe it's explored in the other films in the background, I'm not sure. Again, this is a prequel, so plenty of room for exploring these characters later on. I like how these two characters and the girlfriend have very caring relationships and respect boundaries, unlike a whole bunch of other found footage groups. If someone says shut the camera off, the camera gets shut off. It's healthy and nice to see that you don't usually see, and it makes characters kind of like assholes. That's not the case here. Everyone is more or less really likable. I think Margot is the only debatable one, but she kind of brings herself back around in some areas. Rounding out the trio is Margot's girlfriend, Rebecca, played by Destiny Leilani Brown, who puts in probably the most believable performance, outside of not leaving when she is deliberately threatened. She's fun and a good foil for Margot's tenacity. The relationship is fun and you can clearly see the chemistry between them, which is just really good to see. Plus, she's a pretty decent scream queen when the need arises. I feel like a lot of the backstory here would probably be better explained in the other films, but I was able to follow this one just fine, which is good props to the story, strong enough to serve as an introduction to the series, as well as a continuation, it seems. It's good and creepy, and adds a lot of context for the house as well as the Abaddon Hotel, which is the second Hell House LLC movie's location, I believe. I do need to talk about the cinematography now, though. It is wonderful. There's excellent framing, great sound design, and fun angles and exploration with the camera doing things that kind of seem like a haunt, but also allow more freedom with camera placement. While the manor isn't as explored as well as other houses, say like the one in Deadstream, only really staying in a couple of bedrooms and hallways, it still is a fun character on its own. I just kind of wish we saw a little bit more of it. It feels a lot smaller than it does on the outside. The makeup design is alright for what little calls for it. A couple line deliveries outside of the main trio also feel a little bit odd, like one scene with Rebecca's boss on a telecom, which just kind of felt forced and very fake. It was just very weird. I don't know what that was about. Also, some editing of footage that was supposed to be from the 70s feels just a little too modern, but with a filter thrown on top of the footage and the audio. It's just very noticeable, but otherwise, I think it's very serviceable. I will say, I also wasn't a big fan of the ending here. It does tie things up nicely, but it feels just a little rushed and not fully explored as to how it could have gone. It's okay, ultimately, and ties back to probably the other 3 movies, but as a main ending, it just kind of lacked some oomph or more interesting gore, or really anything that was particularly fully interesting that was already set up. There could have been a lot more than what we got here, which is just okay. I think maybe that had to do with the budget. This feels like a low-budget film through and through, and while I can't find the exact numbers, I think that checks out. It's still an extremely serviceable film with a spooky atmosphere. It just needed to explore some things a bit more and take its time with the ending. But otherwise, very, very solid. I'm definitely curious about the other movies and how those end, if those feel rushed. This one does have an after credits scene that does seem to tie into an upcoming sequel. So to Hell House 5, maybe not a prequel. I'm not sure because this is a prequel, but who knows? At this point, the timeline seems all over the place here, and I'm not sure why. I guess I have to watch the other movies to know. Maybe I will soon. Anyway, I say definitely give this movie a watch if you're a fan of the franchise. Again, I can't really say if this is a good introduction to the series quite yet, but as its own movie and stepping off point, I think it's decent from where I stand. Definitely give it a check out if you're curious, if you like found footage ghost movies and just maybe some low budget character study-esque type films. It does try to be a little bit like Lake Mungo, but I don't think there's enough documentary angle to fully justify that. So this is its own kind of thing. Definitely give it a watch. I think a lot more people would find this interesting as well. Ultimately, Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor, gets a 7 out of 10 from me. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around for another one. I know, I haven't seen the full series, so maybe this is better after seeing the first 3. I'm not sure. They've been out for a while, and I know of them. It's just not something that I've gotten around to. And for the longest time, I thought the movie Haunt was the first Hell House LLC movie under a different name. I don't know why I thought that. They are completely different movies, but either way, I'm not sure. I know all of the Hell House movies are on Shudder, so I might have to check those out. Definitely give this one a watch. Let me know if there are any other kind of found footage horror movies that you guys like. I know I mentioned Grave Encounters. We do not talk about Grave Encounters 2. That movie is terrible. I heard there's a third one, but that was years ago, and I don't think there's any news recently at all. Otherwise, there's also Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. That is fantastic. Give that a watch. And that's all I got for you today. Let me know, what do you guys think about this movie in the comments? Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a video. And that's it. Follow my socials down in the corner if you want. And otherwise, have a great day. And if you're not, have a better one. See ya.
I'm just a ghost in your stereo, the fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost soul, and I'm just a ghost in your stereo.